All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Racial, Indigenous, Social Justice Speaker Series, number 3 tonight. Our topic is navigating the resources and pathways to assess. We will be beginning in a few minutes, so we will wait about 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Miguel.
Yeah.
Hi there. Sorry, I had trouble connecting.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for joining us. We're
Yeah,
going to
of
start
course.
in a little bit.
Okay. Sorry, I had some childcare issues, so I'm still getting to my computer so you can see my face. But anyway, I'm here.
Great. Welcome. Okay, so we're going to get started. My name is Grace. I'm the co-chair for the RISJ, or Racial, Indigenous, and Social Justice Committee. I'm going to be co-moderator today, and also Tina Calderon. She's going to be the co-moderator as well. Okay, so what to expect today? We're going to be doing a welcome. We're going to be doing the land acknowledgement. And then we're going to be introducing the OCMPAC, or Orange County Marine Protected Areas Council, and the RISJ committee. After that, we're going to be introducing the panelists. And then afterwards, we're going to be doing an open discussion and Q&A, where we invite our viewers to ask questions that they may have. So right now, I will pass it to Tina, and she will be providing the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Grace. Me'iha Nehinkam, hello, relatives. I am Tina Calderon, co-chair of the Racial, Indigenous, Social Justice Committee, as well as the director of Ocean Protectors Program for Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous People. Today, I offer the following in acknowledgement of the lands and the waters. Orange County is within the unceded traditional homelands of the Yahachimum and Tongva peoples. The Yahachimum share territory with their relatives and neighbors, the Tongva, from Newport Beach north into Los Angeles County, as well as the Bayamcowichum, which is to the east and to the south. These native peoples are still here and operate as tribal nations with international relationships, though their homelands continue to be occupied in violation of their sovereign nationhood. OCMPAC pays respect to and honors the original stewards of what is now known as Orange County, the Yahachimum, and the Tongva peoples, past, present, and future. I would also like to acknowledge the lands, waters, minerals, plant, and animal relatives with much gratitude. Thank you. And I'm going to turn this over to Makana Nova to introduce OCMPAC.
Good evening. Thank you, Tina. My name is Makana Nova. I'm the incoming co-chair for OCMPAC. Here to tell you a little bit about our organization. So OCMPAC, the mission here is to have a collaboration of city, county, and state officials, academic faculty, nonprofit organizations, and other community members who share an interest in protecting and increasing awareness of Orange County marine protected areas and other coastal marine resources. So our current membership includes a variety of different groups and engagement, including state and local government agencies, environmental nonprofits, universities, and community members. Our mission, as you can see here, is to preserve and protect Orange County coastal resources through ongoing improvements in research, monitoring, education, outreach, and enforcement. OCMPAC is comprised of several different committees. We have the Grants Committee, who looks for money to support our projects, research and monitoring, education and outreach, compliance, and the RISJ Committee, who's here today. It stands for Racial, Indigenous, and Social Justice Committee. And we are in the process of forming a new Student Engagement Committee. So that is coming soon. This speaker series is hosted by the RISJ Committee. This is the third in our speaker series, and our first meeting was really well attended. We had 113 registrants and about, 46 attendees. The way I've heard also, our second meeting was great, a little bit of a different approach, and we had 31 registrants for that meeting. And this is our third and final in the speaker series. So we're really excited for that today. And this series intentionally centers on the experiences of Indigenous and other Black, people of color, LGBTQ, and disabled speakers accessing our marine protected areas and coastal beaches in Orange County. So, yep, moving to the next slide, we do have 14 collaboratives across the state. So the MPA Collaborative Network consists of a collective of different collaboratives throughout the state and all interested in protecting our marine sources along the coastline. And I'll drop a link in just a second for the MPA Collaborative and different ways you can get involved. The OCMPAC website is listed here, where you can sign up for our mailing list, get emails to attend our general meetings. Our next general meeting will be in person. It's held August 22nd. It will be at the Orange County Sailing and Event Center in Dana Point. It's down in the harbor, and it's held on August 22nd from 12 noon to 2 p.m. So we hope you can join us in person. To become a member, typically you need to attend 2 meetings a year, and we hold meetings quarterly. And we also invite you to join our committees. That's another great way to get involved. And I think that wraps it up for my intro here. I'm going to pass it back over to Grace to get started with our series. Thank you.
Thank you, Makana. Okay, so today's panelist is going to be 3 people. The first one is going to be Kate Wheeler from Crystal Cove Conservancy. The second is Jennifer Runyon from Aquarium of the Pacific. And then the third is going to be Miguel Ordeñana from Natural History Museum. So I'm going to be giving a brief intro on our speakers as listed, and then I'm going to be going each of their bio for a deeper introduction. So first, we're going to start with Kate. Kate Wheeler is nearly tripped over her good fortune when she returned to Crystal Cove Conservancy as the president and CEO of 2019. With the support of a crack team and a clever board, she leads the organization's work to completely restore the beach cottages in the historic district, a National Register of Historic Places site, to educate and inspire students who have little access to places like Crystal Cove, and to protect the park and its natural, cultural, and historic resources for visitors today and those who will come later. Kate's approach to the work, which holds collaboration, equity, and investment in people at its heart, have served her well through more than 2 decades of helping a broad-ranging collection of really great nonprofit organizations fulfilling their missions. Kate reluctantly admits that fundraising, finance, and organization development are her areas of expertise, but she holds great admiration and a bit envy for the scientists, educators, and naturalists she is surrounded by. So thank you for joining us today, Kate.
Thanks, Grace. I'm sorry you had to read that whole thing.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, thank you for joining. So your leadership at Crystal Cove Conservancy has been truly transformative, especially in restoring historic beach cottages and making natural spaces accessible to visitors and students. So yeah, with your extensive experience in nonprofit management and your focus on collaboration and equity, we're excited to hear more about your journey.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's start by discussing the challenges and successes you encountered in preserving such a unique historic site. So the first question I have for you is, how does Crystal Cove Conservancy collaborate with other organizations, stakeholders, and community members to achieve its goals and preserve the park's natural, cultural, and historic resources?
Yeah, happy to take that. I think collaboration is really at the heart of our organization. We are the contracted nonprofit partner to Crystal Cove State Park, which is on the shared ancestral homelands of the Hashman and Tongva tribal nations. So really, our organization was born as a partner to another organization. So collaboration is really at the heart of sort of our core values. It's also, for me, you know, it's been a big part of my career, creating collaborations and seeing what they can do to advance an organization's mission. So a couple of them that I could highlight for Crystal Cove Conservancy that have been really transformative for us. First of all, Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples. We've had a long partnership with SPI for many years now, and have done work with them in imbuing our programs with Indigenous perspectives, a tribal fellowship that we were able to help them create, as well as creating access to the cottages themselves. We've been able to work with state parks to open up the cottages for more than they ever have been before, in order to give Indigenous folks access to stay in the cottages in their own homelands. I think another collaboration that I would point to, which began for our organization more than 10 years ago, maybe 12, 15 years ago, is with UCI, with University of California, Irvine. And we have deep partnerships with UCI and the School of Education, helping develop our programs, helping us develop them in culturally relevant ways and assess them. We have partnerships with the School of Biological Sciences and the School of Engineering, and that really enables us to create really robust programs in ways that are culturally relevant to the communities that we aim to work with. So there's collaboration is really part of our DNA, and there are a number of collaborations that really help us do our work. So we sort of live and die by those.
Wonderful. Those are all wonderful programs. Thank you for answering that. So the next question I have for you is, what specific strategies does Crystal Cove Conservancy employ to promote equity and accessibility in its educational programs and conservation efforts, particularly for students with limited access to such environments?
Well, I think I will start by saying that our education team, our programs team, is a remarkably diverse team, especially where we sit in Orange County. And I think that happened because of the staff. We had some staff members who many of you know, Sarah Ludovice, who's been a big part of OCMPAC, and others who are on our staff with Sarah, who really, I think, led the way on equity and diversity and creating, ensuring that our programs team looked like the students that they were teaching, that they looked like them, that they spoke the same languages, that they were from similar communities. And so I think when students come to us, to learn and explore the park, they see people who look like they do, who speak the same languages. And I think that's a really important piece. We're not as far along as we would like on that. I think that we have some big goals at Crystal Cove Conservancy to become an even more diverse staff. We are and have always been a white-led organization. And I like to say that because I think it's important to say the truth. And the fact is that, we are and always have been led by white folks. And we really want to develop our staff so that those who come next are representative of the students that we teach as well. In our programs, we prioritize Title I schools. So I will say that in my role, I spend a lot of time with donors. And one of the questions they often ask me is, oh, are you doing programs with, insert the name of a coastal or private school? And the answer to that very often is not much. We're not doing that much with those schools because we have intentionally prioritized Title I schools and making sure that those schools can participate in our program. We also pay the full costs of those schools participating and develop curricula that are aligned with the teachers' needs in terms of next generation science standards, and to make it as easy as possible for schools to participate that don't have the resources that, say, a coastal school or a private school might.
Thank you for answering that. Yeah, that's a really good cause. Okay, so another question I have is how does Crystal Cove Conservancy measure the impact of its programs and initiatives, particularly in terms of education outcomes, visitor engagement, and also conservation success?
Sure. So I will point to a collaboration on that as well. We work very closely with UCI School of Education to develop pre and post program assessments for all of our K-12 education programs and our college internships to ensure that we can see, are we having the impact that we intend to have? How is it landing with students? What is their experience like? Does it feel like it's culturally relevant to them? And are they leaving our programs feeling differently, bonded to public lands and protected lands and waters? Do they see themselves as a part of the solution? So we really work hard to make sure that we have rigor in our evaluations and our assessments. And we look for not just those successes, but we want those evaluations to tell us where we're not hitting the mark, where it's not working. Because if we're not willing to sort of look at what's not working, what's not going well, then I think we don't have, we don't have the sustainability that we're going to need over time. So I think we really take evaluation seriously. For as far as visitor engagement, we are not where I want to be on that. For a long time, we were working on coastal development permits through the Coastal Commission. And the cottages that we've restored and are restoring are meant to be lower cost coastal accommodations. And the Coastal Commission would often ask us, okay, so how are you doing on that? How diverse are the folks who are staying in the cottages? And I think our answer to that for a long time was inadequate. It was, we can't really do anything about that. It's on the public reservation system. That's, what can we do? Means test, ask for tax returns. Well, it's not good enough. And so we really dug in and we said, of course we can try to have an impact on that. We can do things like paid social media advertising in zip codes that aren't the wealthiest zip code in the nation where the park happens to sit. So we can do that paid social media advertising and do it in other languages and create how to reserve cottages, videos, things like that, to create more equitable experiences for folks staying in the cottages. And so, we're trying some things. We're being honest about where we're not doing as well as we would like to do, and being frank about that, transparent about that, and trying some different things.
Yeah, thank you for being transparent about that and answering those questions.
Sure thing.
Yeah. So we're going to be going to the next speaker. Jennifer Runyon is going to be our next speaker. She's from Aquarium the Pacific. So she is the Education Outreach Supervisor at the Aquarium of the Pacific. She graduated from UC Santa Cruz with a BS in marine biology and received her Master's of Environmental Studies degree from the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. Over the past 18 years, Jen has worked with a variety of nonprofits, agencies, and universities focusing on making the ocean accessible to socio-economically and culturally diverse communities. Currently, within her work at the Aquarium of the Pacific, she brings the ocean to those who are unable to get to the beach or to the aquarium through her education outreach programs. And there is a link to the Aquarium of the Pacific below. So anyone who is welcome to go to that. So Jennifer, we're happy to have you join us. And thank you for your work on advocating ocean accessibility.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, welcome. So yeah, I have a few questions for you. So the first one is, can you provide an overview of the education outreach programs offered by the Aquarium of the Pacific and how they aim to make the ocean accessible to diverse communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a variety of programs. We have on-site and off-site programs. So as you mentioned, I focus on our off-site programs. And from there, we have several different ways in which we reach communities. So one of them is through our aquarium on wheels, which is a literal semi-truck that goes out to up to 80 miles out. And we have touch pools that are on there that have a suite of Southern California intertidal tide pool features for folks to touch, and also some baby sharks as well. And so we're able to really kind of literally bring the aquarium to them. So that's what has been one of our flagship programs that has been, well received. And then because a lot of times our aquarium on wheels is focused on, communities up to 80 miles, we want to make sure that we were able to do programming back at home for our Long Beach community. And so what we developed more recently was our mobile ocean classroom programming. And so for this programming, it's all free programs for Long Beach Unified School Districts. And, we offer anything for our TK crowd all the way up to our high schoolers. And just to be able to provide any kind of free programming that we can have, I'm really focusing on ocean literacy and really, getting them to have a better appreciation for ocean animals that are literally in that backyard that they might not be able to get a chance to come. And then we also offer tabling events too, where we'll go out to different community events to be present in that way. And then we also offer, this isn't necessarily mine, but a different type of outreach program, which is more of our virtual program. So with that, we're able to reach, pretty much anywhere in North America. We've been able to kind of bring some of our aquarium to all these folks, mainly through video conferencing. So those have been some of the main ways in which we've been able to make the ocean accessible to diverse communities.
Thank you for answering that. I love going to the aquarium and going to the moon jelly touch pool and just touching them and seeing how soft they are and squishy. Yeah, so thank you for answering that. My second question for you is, can you discuss any innovative approaches or new initiatives that the Aquarium of the Pacific is exploring to further expand access to marine education and reach underserved communities?
Absolutely. So this, I think, is one thing that really makes me excited about our education department is the fact that we've basically created different divisions within our education program. We have kind of like our on the floor, folks that are engaged at the aquarium kind of group. We have the school programs and outreach group, and then we also happen to have a new division, if you call it, that's really kind of committed to STEM pathways. And so even though they're considered divisions within our education group, we do all work very closely with one another. We're all in the same office and we all help each other out. And so I think what's really great about that is we're able to really kind of gain inspiration from one another and really find ways to collaborate even within our department. And so, for instance, one thing that we're recently celebrating is actually a scholarship program that is that the goal is to broaden participation in marine science and to really kind of help students find their own STEM identity within the community and to just support students in this field. So the goal is to really kind of bring a more variety of lived experiences to the challenges that are currently faced within the marine sciences and really kind of create something that's really healthy and sustainable for everyone in regards to ocean sciences. But aside from that, some other work that we are doing within our school programs division is more focused on some partnerships. One of those being with LAUSD, so Los Angeles Unified School District. And we're focusing on after school programs and summer school programs. So we're working with a suite of other organizations to really kind of help identify what are some schools that maybe take a little bit more priority and then kind of focus on those particular communities. And then we're also currently developing our mobile ocean classroom program. So we're trying to offer more variety of programs, and we're realizing that as we work with our Long Beach community, that there's definitely more need there, especially with some of the wellness centers that are popping up for many of the middle schools. And so with that, we're creating a more career-focused program. And along with that is just kind of understanding that, if you want to work at aquarium, you don't necessarily have to be a marine biologist, right? You can go on ahead and maybe have interest in, feeding animals, animal welfare. That's one pathway. Another one might be focused on AV. If you're interested in the audio visuals or, keeping the aquarium safe or focusing more on guest interactions or social media, right? There's so many different ways that you could still be part of the aquarium and get a chance to kind of, keep that aquarium mission going, to instill a sense of wonder to our guests and to really kind of create a deeper sense of connection to the Pacific Ocean.
Thank you. Yeah, so we looked at the present programs. Is there any future goals or priorities in the education outreach programs that the Aquarium Pacific has not carried out yet? And how do you envision continuing to make that ocean accessible to diverse communities in the years to come?
Yeah, so I think it's something that we're just always constantly working on and evolving. For instance, our mobile ocean classroom actually had several less offerings than it had before. And so we're just trying to figure out really and just work through whether it be mobile ocean classroom or offerings offsite or even onsite, just looking through the gaps of service by creating partnerships to be able to identify what those needs are to mainly serving our Long Beach neighborhoods and to the surrounding neighborhoods around us. So it's just an ongoing process that we're just kind of always working on, and also part of our main strategic goal as well. So always just a work in progress.
Thank you. Looking forward to that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next speaker, who is Miguel Ordeñana. Ordeñana is an environmental educator and wildlife biologist. He works at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County as a senior manager in the Community Science Office. As a community science senior manager, Miguel promotes and creates community science projects and recruits and trains participants. Miguel utilizes his mammal research background by conducting urban mammal research in LA and leads MHMLASCS, Southern California Squirrel Survey, and also the Backyard Bat Survey. Miguel serves as an advisor as a jaguar project in the southwestern Nicaragua that he initiated in 2012, as well as a board member for the Friends of Griffith Park and National Wildlife Federation. Miguel is dedicated towards making science and access to nature more equitable with the goal of increasing the representation and retention of underrepresented communities within the environmental field. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from the University of Southern California and an MS in ecology from the University of California, Davis. Okay. Hi, Miguel. Great to have you here. So with your extensive background in urban mammal research and your dedication to community science and equitable access to nature, we're eager to hear your insights. So the first question I have for you is, can you provide an overview of the Natural History Museum LAC's community science projects and initiatives and how they engage and involve participants in scientific research?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. And it's an honor to be part of this group here. Can you hear that background stuff? I'm sorry. Can you hear background?
Hear anything?
No, you're good? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So basically, our community science office started in 2011, started off as a hub for community science. And then as we grew, we started having a lot of internal programming that was curated by our curators, our scientists, looking at urban biodiversity. That is our museum's kind of one of our primary focuses and mission, not only studying urban biodiversity, but connecting communities with urban biodiversity, local nature that's relatable, relevant, breaking down barriers between people and science and people and nature. And as somebody who comes from a historically excluded community, it meant a lot for me to be part of that effort. And so for me, it was a really great opportunity to not only participate in this kind of work that is more community centered, but also kind of figure out how it can make this even more accessible and inclusive. And so we've kind of moved currently into kind of a focus on doing local projects, regional projects, and global projects. And all of those looking towards making sure that inclusivity is at the forefront. Our primary tool that we use for a lot of our projects is iNaturalist, which is a free app that you can download. And what it does is it turns a photo into a data point that we can use to learn about animal distribution of species that were introduced to the LA area or Southern California, and also use it to track native biodiversity and see how they're doing, how it's doing presently, and compare that to the past using museum collections, which we have at our disposal here at the museum. And so at a global scale, I'll start there. We have done the City Nature Challenge. It's our 9th year this year that we participated in that, and just happened this past late April into early May. And it was a global competition that originally started with 2 cities involved. Then it expanded to over 400 cities this year across the world. And so that was an effort to kind of connect people from all over the world with nature, and also work with community leaders from each of these cities to see how we can make it most accessible to them, whether it's the type of programming that we do, the language justice work that we do by translating what we need to translate, making sure that the communities that we're trying to engage in all these different cities are being supported through that process. And then also throughout different age groups. At a regional scale, we have projects like our reptile and amphibian survey, our slime project, which is snails and slugs living in the metropolitan environment, and then the Southern California Squirrel Survey, which is what I run, that looks at kind of the distribution of native and non-native squirrels. And so that's across Southern California. And the idea of that is to use iNaturalist as a way to make nature exploration more accessible. And because anybody can do it from the comfort of their own home, go to their favorite and most relevant pocket park in their neighborhood, or use it as a tool to learn about, hey, I don't know what this is. Let me take a photo, and the artificial intelligence will tell you what it is. And so it's a really great way to kind of break down that barrier. In addition to that, we have local projects, which are moving towards more recently, where we are partnering with local community-based organizations, including Indigenous communities, and really kind of meeting them where they're at as far as what projects, what initiatives are culturally or ecologically relevant to them, and see if we could take a back seat and give a supportive role. And so that is kind of where our opportunity is to have that deeper engagement with those local projects. And so we have a variety of those as well. One in Elephant Hill, one in Yana Village, also in the same region of Northeast Los Angeles, is owned by the Gabrielina Shoshone and co-managed by the only Indigenous school, Anahuacalmaca. And it's a really great opportunity for us to do habitat surveys on this land, so they can use that information in whatever way they want to advocate to fight against gentrification, or if it's to learn about and teach their students and the next generation of Indigenous leaders what's on the land, how to use these traditional tools. And then also we're learning as well from how they interpret the land. And so we can be more respectful when we enter that space and engage in these types of programs. So I'll stop there. I can go on forever about that stuff.
Yeah, all those programs are wonderful. I've been using iNaturalist for almost a decade now, and I feel like it's one of the greatest tools for identifying all types of species. Yeah, so thank you for answering that. So what types of challenges or opportunities have you encountered in implementing community science projects with Natural History Museum, and how would you address them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think a misconception is that community science is a lower grade version of science. And we're here to kind of really prove that wrong, that you can meet these kind of traditional goals of documenting biodiversity, pushing for impactful policy through community science as well, and also do community engagement on top of all that. And I think people think, oh, you're putting so much focus on community engagement, the scientific integrity is going to suffer. And we are really hopefully proof that that's not the case. And we're being impactful with this data in so many different ways, from a policy perspective to a land management perspective, and of course, a community engagement perspective. And so we can do all those things and be impactful, and not really saying, hey, one is more important than the other, but both are important for different reasons. And so that's one thing that we kind of are challenged by. And even internally, to be honest, we work at a traditional research academic institution here. And so they really want to make sure that the science and community science is really, really there and present in everything that we do. And we're able to do that. And we can do that in a way that's not just so kind of top down, where the museum decides how to organize this work and go forward, and we're the law, and then that's where it stands, but actually be responsive to community input, even after you start a project. So for instance, we have a bat project that originally started as an acoustic survey, looking at the species-specific echolocations of bats and seeing where bats are and aren't throughout the LA area. And the answer is they're everywhere. We surveyed over 100 neighborhoods, 100 locations across all types of neighborhoods, really focusing on historically excluded neighborhoods, historically excluded from conservation research and community science. And so we are able to fill in some data gaps, but also engage with communities that have deserved to be engaged with for a very long time. And so through that work, we're able to document 14 species of bats that were not known to science, not known to live in the LA area before, 5 of which are species of special concern in the state of California. So there's that conservation impact, right? And then by getting feedback from our scientists, we learned that, hey, they're really interested in getting this really personally relevant data because it's on their property, it's at their school, it's at their Boys and Girls Club where they're getting these recordings. But then they said, hey, it's good to know that there's bats here. How can I get my family more engaged and actually see bats? And because that's what we want to do. And we want to take it a step further and learn about the physical places that these bats rely on for survival, whether they're trees, whether they're freeway underpasses. And so we adapted our project based on that. And then that also made our project even more impactful in a different way, because we've now been doing the summer surveys of roosts with the community. They see bats flying out, they count bats with us. That data goes to our national and local understanding of bat ecology. And also we're engaging communities that wouldn't have engaged with us otherwise. So that's kind of a case study of kind of how we're using this approach to making sure that we don't kind of let kind of community engagement or the science kind of drop and and that we're hopefully having an impact in a lot of ways at different scales.
Thank you. Yeah, I love hearing how these specific science projects bring family together, especially in a scientific aspect. So for my last question to you, so P22 was a famous lion that lived at Griffith Park. He's quite well known in the media. What is your role with P22? And is there anything that you'd like to share?
I mean, so much. It could be an hour-long thing here, but anyway. So the short story is through a grassroots study. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and I'm proud to have grown up here. And Griffith Park, which is a very well-known park in Los Angeles, the Hollywood sign, the zoo, Greek theater, etc., was my backyard park. It was my local Yosemite. I never went to the Santa Monica Mountains as a child. I went there finally as an adult. And so that was my access to wildness and nature. And so when I had the opportunity as an adult to study it and give my own kind of gift back to the park for inspiring me, I started a grassroots study with the Friends of Griffith Park to look at whether or not Griffith Park was an island, using these remotely or motion activated cameras to see if these wide-ranging animals were able to get in and out of the park over these freeways that surround the park. And the answer was the animals were able to connect via these bridges or equestrian tunnels. That was great news. And as we were about to kind of start to wrap up the project, in 2012, I was able to document the very first image of a mountain lion in Griffith Park, which would later be known as P22, Puma 22, the 22nd Puma incorporated into the National Park Service study. And this mountain lion is very significant to me because as somebody who grew up there, this was like a Bigfoot sighting moment. And I didn't know how impactful it would be to the community and the world. But just to know that there is now this ambassador for coexistence that now exists. And I had a small role in making that happen along with other people, is an honor that I take pride in still to this day. And even his life, I was able to photograph him for 10 years and share his story and those images with the people to inspire people of different backgrounds. And as somebody who comes from an immigrant background, from Nicaragua specifically, and had to cross boundaries to get here, his journey crossing the 405 freeway, then a bunch of fancy neighborhoods, and then the 101 to get into Griffith Park feels like there's a parallel there to not just my family's kind of story, but a lot of stories here in Los Angeles. And so for him to be that bridge between communities like mine and a lot of other communities that have not been part of these conversations about wildlife conservation is great, and an impact that still gives to this day, even after his passing in December of 2022. He, in April 2022, through a 10-year campaign that he was a catalyst for, they broke ground on what will be the biggest wildlife crossing ever to be built. And it will be over the 101, around where he was born, to serve a population that is on the verge of extinction. This bridge will connect these populations that are disconnected by the 101 and give them a fighting chance, because right now they're getting hit by cars, they're killing each other over space, and they're inbreeding with each other. And so P22 was that ambassador that really got that bridge fundraised over $100 million, and it will be built by the beginning of 2026. It's already under construction. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it in the news. And he was the motivation for that, for people to put their money, their hard-earned money, down to contribute towards something very impactful for the next generation. And he's been that bridge between the conservation community, wildlife, nature, and the general public. And for him to be that bridge, especially his story being translated in so many languages, Spanish, indigenous languages, storytelling, etc., means that his story of resilience and beating the odds is obviously striking a chord with so many people of so many different backgrounds. And in his passing, he sparked a very important and long overdue conversation about what are the museum's roles in working with Indigenous communities, and how can we kind of deal with situations where when we have the opportunity to bring culturally relevant animals, individuals, species to our institution, what is that proactive consultation that we should be doing with Indigenous communities so that we do this in the right way, so we honor the scientific importance of this animal, but importantly, the cultural importance of this animal, and be very respectful and empathetic to that. And I think that's kind of the steps that haven't happened most recently. And those conversations are still ongoing, where we continue to, that was just that first conversation where a bunch of tribes converged to have a meeting with our museum about what they want with P22 after his passing. And I mean, which I'm proud of our institution, is that, like, not only did we listen, it wasn't a performative way, but we also, where we just listened and then did what we wanted to do, but we listened and we responded to that and didn't try and push back or sneak on anything underneath or anything like that, as far as collecting specimens. And they wanted him buried just like they would a human ancestor or human relative. And that's what would happen. We gave them back and they were able to do that. And obviously that's just one thing. And I hope that it not only inspires us to kind of think differently about how we manage specimens and things like that, but hopefully inspires other institutions. I had the opportunity to speak with Gabrielle Crow at a conference for museums all over the world. And we talked about this story, about how this is just a spark for more long overdue conversations about how Indigenous communities should have a bigger role in how we manage collections, how we do conservation research, and that being proactive and having that consultation as early as possible is important. So I'll stop there.
Wow, thank you. That is such an extraordinary story. And thank you for sharing your personal story about that too. Okay, so our next segment will involve questions that any of our three panelists can answer, or they can choose to address them individually based on their expertise. So following this discussion, we will transition to taking questions from our viewers. So please feel free to submit any inquiries that you have for our three esteemed panelists. So my first question for in general is what steps has your organization taken to identify and remove systemic barriers to accessibility within your workplace and community? And anybody can answer.
Oh, okay. I'll start. One example, I mean, we have very great programs that were, I mean, already kind of very similar to what Kate and Jennifer mentioned, of serving Title I schools and prioritizing them. And we have mobile museum trucks that go to schools to meet them where they're at. We also offer free admission. But I'll be more specific about kind of another way through pathway programs. So we got this grant for recently called the is a career kind of experience grant through the National Science Foundation to not only create another internship program that a lot of academic institutions offer, but make it a little bit different and serve a community hopefully that has been underserved for a very long time, and which is students just graduating from college and already took that step, but now have gone through college for whatever reason without any research experience. And research experience, when you're trying to get into the science or biology field or any field really, is important to really kind of compete with the competition and get into graduate school if that's something that you want to do. And so we catered this internship for selectively for people or recent undergraduate or post-bacs, what they're called, that recently graduated with their bachelor's, to recent graduates that have zero experience or very little experience. And so this opportunity to immerse them into the museum research field. They got mentors through our curators and who kind of guide them through the scientific process. They do a project and also get a lot of other professional development from our education staff, exhibit staff, artists, And in case they don't want to go down the research path after this program, they can learn about other opportunities in the museum field. And so there's not that pressure either. I mean, just that exposure. So that's one example. And I think that's hopefully going to lead to us kind of instituting these pathway programs as part of our operational budget and not just a grant, a 3-year grant. And that's the next step I hope we can fundraise for after we prove that this is successful and this is needed and that we're filling a very important void here. But that's kind of one way we're trying to support the next generation, but also making sure that our community science programs are accessible to everybody, whether it's parents, adults, kids. And so now we're trying to offer more childcare at our program so that we eliminate that barrier. And so because it is a real one, and it only starts with kind of being empathetic towards that. And the way you're empathetic towards that is you have to have people here that are single moms, that have these different backgrounds, that are working here under the museum's roof, that can share those lived experiences and allow us to better be those bridges between those communities. So anyway, yeah, thanks.
I'll just jump in on a couple of things. One is we really increased our minimum wage, and we don't do unpaid internships anymore. And similar to what Miguel was saying, you know, our internship and career pathways programs were started with unpaid internships, and we had I will say a funding partner, not just a funder, but a funding partner who was willing to try new things and fund new things. Parks California, who supported a natural resource internship program for us that prioritized BIPOC and first-gen college students. They are not funding it anymore, but it has been incorporated into our work as a permanent program. It also inspired us to never do any unpaid internships anymore. So all of our internships are now paid. We also really believe in paying organizations who work with us. So when we're working with BIPOC-led organizations, we really try to resource that and don't just expect them to sort of find a way to do it with us, but really find ways to resource that as well. And then I think I just have to say again, like I really listen to my staff. Our programs team in particular has led our organization in figuring out how to diversify our workforce. And I think for a long time, people thought, oh, we're in this very wealthy white community. How are we ever going to have a diverse workforce? Why try? And our programs team, before I was with the organization, they just figured out how to do it themselves. And they created a really rigorous process that they follow when trying to fill positions. And it has resulted in this idea of equity as an organizational core value for our organization has been pushed up by our staff, and it really required leadership to step in and then push up to the board too, and be okay like getting some people mad at you and sending some donations back when people get mad at you. And so I think you just have to really step into it, and I think I think we can't overlook the part that funding and money plays in that.
Yeah, I think, Kate, a little bit about what you talked about in regards of, being really intentional about folks that are part of of your organization. Here at the Aquarium Pacific, we also try to be really intentional with our hiring practices. And really, it's an iterative process, right? So we're always kind of seeing like, are we being as equitable as possible? Are we removing some of these systemic barriers, to applying for this position? What are some historical notions or traditional notions that folks have in regards of hiring for X, Y, or Z position? Is it really necessary? What does that look like? How do we be more inclusive in that? So that's always something that we're working on there. But I think within our community, community being the guests within our aquarium, and then also Long Beach and kind of a little bit further out, the goal is for us to really kind of build that STEM identity, and whatever that may look like for each individual person. And really, I think some of that really stems from a sense of belonging. And so here at the aquarium, our goal is to really kind of be that hub for the Long Beach neighborhood. So, you know, kind of creating that space, that meeting space that folks can come and have meetings, really kind of highlighting different communities that are part of Long Beach, that really make up Long Beach itself, and celebrating those. And then also really kind of listening to our Long Beach community. What are their needs and how can we best help them? So we just want to really be an integral part of our community. And a lot of that too, as I mentioned, community is also within the aquarium itself. So our goal is to really always treat guests and design our programs in a way that is, you know, that is accessible. And that is just, you know, really kind of opens up the possibilities of like, wow, I didn't think I had a STEM identity, but like I really resonate with, you know, X or Y particular thing, or jellies, for instance, right? So there's always different ways that our goal is to kind of be able to reach folks either, you know, emotionally or just through like a really sense of belonging. And then aside from that, and of building, you know, networks within our communities, but also to try to bring those communities that can't necessarily afford the aquarium, because we are a little bit pricey, you know, through our doors, and make sure that they also feel like they are part of our community, regardless of that price. So we have an access program through WIC and then United Way to help kind of reduce that financial barrier for those folks to also feel comfortable coming into the aquarium as well.
Okay, thank you for answering that. So another question for you, for all three, is what measures does your organization take to ensure that information, communication, and technology are accessible to everyone, including those with sensory impairments and other disabilities?
I can just use one example. I think we have a long way to go. I think we have to be inviting of these communities, but also when they take the time to give their input on what needs to change, we need to be able to be in a position to act on that. And I think we had the opportunity to connect with a group called Hearts for Sight, who serves the low vision and vision impaired community, and they make themselves as an organization reduce barriers for their community, and going outside, going on hikes, doing things that people say that it's not for that community. And so they wanted to work with us to kind of explore what the museum could offer their community. And so we had this open house type of situation where we had the museum closed off to the public on a Tuesday, and we brought that community in here and catered a experience just for them, based on kind of their community leaders basically input on working co-creating this program with our staff, and what objects to bring out, what are some cool touchable things, what are some audio things that we should bring out, and so that their broader community then come experience this and give us their honest feedback, and not just about kind of that experience, but in general about the museum, getting to the museum, all those steps that make it inaccessible or not as accessible as they want it to be or need it to be. And then it's up to us to really step up after that and address those things. And so that's kind of where we're at. And eventually, as a community science office, it'd be great if after we build that trust, we would love to have them participate in community science projects, like helping us with our ornithologists and bird by ear, and use that kind of ability to help us learn about birds and for them to connect with birding. And so that's something that is further down the line, but we're trying to work at the speed of trust. And I think that's really important for any of these partnerships that we try to build, and not to rush it based on an exhibit, based on a program, or whatever the schedule is. Just doing it at the pace of the partner and centering their needs. So that's just one example.
Yeah, I'll chime in with that. So we work with an organization known as Culture City. And so the goal of Culture City is to create sensory accessibility and inclusion for those with with invisible disabilities. And so with that, most of our staff go on ahead and are trained through Culture City itself. There's a little training that we go through. And then after that, we have Culture City sensory bags. And so we're part of this network of organizations that if folks have, sensory needs, then they can look onto Culture City and see that we are one of the organizations that are receptive to that. And so they could always come and get a sensory bag if they would like. We have a social story that's on their website, and that really kind of focuses on, what it's like joining us at the aquarium from before you even enter the aquarium doors through the entering process, and just setting up expectations through a lot of visuals and through a little bit of storytelling of really kind of understanding what their experience is like. Not only do we have social stories though through Culture City, we also have that for many of our volunteer programs. So we're able to offer kind of a general idea of what it's like to volunteer in a variety of capacities. So for our volunteer programs, you can either be, you can help feed fields and sea lions or our jellies, for instance, or you can help educate the public. And then we also have some community science groups as well that you could go on ahead and join. And so a lot of these participatory science experiences also happen to have social stories that go along with them, just to kind of make sure expectations are met and folks feel comfortable with the experience prior to joining. And then we have some quiet rooms as well. We have these really interesting caption glasses for our films. We are working on our signage so that, Miguel, as you mentioned, is always ever evolving and trying to create relationships with communities and building that trust and providing more for your guests. Same thing for here at the aquarium. We're working on multilingual signage and working with communities to just make sure that what we're able to provide really meets those needs. So that's something that is an ongoing engagement that we're currently working on. And then we also try to work with some of our local communities and provide them with some special evenings or events that are just for them. So for instance, we have a few autism family events that we do throughout the year. So that way that community can just have their special time at the aquarium itself.
A couple of things I will just say, underlining some of what other panelists said. I think really listening to folks' lived experience, paying attention to that, and doing something about it when you hear. I mean, a good example of that is we have beach wheelchairs at Crystal Cove, which have big fat tires so that folks who use wheelchairs for mobility can get around. They rely on having a caregiver, having somebody who is able-bodied there who can, sort of move them through the sand. And I have a kid who's a wheelchair user, and, they don't always want to have somebody pushing them. And a lot of folks, it takes away that independence and mobility and autonomy. And so really thinking about how can we get track chairs, how can we get power chairs at Crystal Cove, and then ensuring that we can maintain them over time. And I think the lived experience piece of it is really important for things like that. And then also things that, I also have one of my kids is non-binary. And so I spend a lot of time noticing bathrooms and thinking about things like, are the bathrooms accessible? Is there a bathroom that is gender neutral? Things like that. Language justice too. We've spent we've spent a lot of time ensuring that our program materials are available in multiple languages, and really being cognizant of finding those places everywhere we can to identify where we can drop those barriers. And then we also have projects like a project we're doing with with the news. We're doing interviews with BIPOC, and so really doing some research too to try to find out, what might we be missing, what kind of problems and solutions might we be missing there.
Okay, great. So I do have one question from our viewers. This is from Alexa, and this is to Jennifer. Are there any efforts or possibilities to extend the aquarium's marine education outreach to underserved and or Indigenous communities in other countries, such as Latin America?
That is a a great question, and one which I would love to see happen. So I don't think, I mean, currently we've worked with a handful of groups in Canada as well as some of the Northern Territories. So I guess so far just within the northern portion of America, but we've worked with a handful of Indigenous groups as well up in that region. But we have yet to make it down south. So I think that's a very interesting question and one that would be worth exploring. I think there's potential currently probably with some of our virtual programs in which we might be able to make some of those connections happen. So if you're interested in continuing that conversation, if you're interested, maybe writing it down the chat, then we can go on ahead and have some time to connect.
Great, thank you. So if any of the viewers also have any questions, they can put it in the Q&A chat and still open. So I do have another question. Let's see. So how does your organization address the intersectionality of accessibility with other dimensions of diversity, such as race, gender, age, and socioeconomic status? So it's kind of a related question, but spreading more into it.
I'll start. Oh, sorry, Miguel. Okay. Again, because of the zip code where the park sits, we spend a lot of time thinking about, in particular, socioeconomics and how that intersects with, all of these issues, and thinking about the way that really wealthy communities like the one where Crystal Cove is, how that impacts inclusion, and how, whose park does it feel like when folks visit Crystal Cove? And I think over the last few years, we've made a lot of progress there, that, if you're around Crystal Cove in one of the shopping centers or something like that, it's real clear that you're kind of Newport, Laguna Beach, wealthy coastal community. When you're in the park, it's starting to feel different. We are starting to see, a lot more visitors who are from communities that have been historically excluded. I think one of the things that we found was that COVID in some ways really helped with that we had more visitors at the park. All of our programs, we were able to create distance learning programs. Students were doing them at home. Their families were able to see that. And so I think we were able to make some progress there. And just thinking about the way that we talk about the work in our community, the people who work with us, and having those folks be representatives of those communities, and really listening and centering their experience at the park, I think we've started to see a shift there. We are not where we want to be, and that's okay, because unless we recognize that, we're not going to ever get to where we want to be.
Yeah, I love everything I just heard. I think just that mentality is what every big institution, small institution needs to live by, so that, yeah, there's always kind of that growth mindset. One example, well, I want to also share that we not only have a community science program, we have a community engagement department. And so they do a lot of important work to be that bridge between communities and our museum at large. And we've had, for instance, LGBTQIA plus day and celebration, and all our educators and our performing artists got involved. We had programming, and just kind of celebrating those communities, and hopefully from there making sure that every day is LGBTQIA plus day, right? It's not just a heritage kind of month or day kind of feel. And I think that's kind of the learning moment that we'll have as these partnerships build and are stronger, where to the point where these partners have a even more deeper role in kind of informing our programs. And another example is we are co-creating a program with the Fernandino Tatavium youth on doing a tide pooling event near Cabrillo Aquarium in San Pedro, and we're taking that community out and in a way that is accessible to them and making sure that whatever they want as far as that program is concerned, that we are able to kind of accommodate that. And then to that earlier question that was posed by one of the listeners or audience members, we, through our partnership with the Indigenous school, OCMPAC, they actually have a very strong partnership, not only with the Gabrielino Shoshone, but Indigenous communities in Mexico. And so they often not only do work on the land and at their school and their community in the LA area, but they bring those resources back to Mexico, to the Indigenous communities over there. For instance, I taught them how to use acoustic monitoring. They borrowed one of those acoustics detectors and brought it down.
Oh, I saw a cat.
And my son saw a cat. That's what he wanted to share. And so they're using those tools, and they came up for kind of a learning exchange to our museum, and anyway, so those are ways to provide those resources, and also again to learn from these communities as well, and make sure that we're working more respectfully in all aspects. So anyway, that's another example.
I will piggyback off of my two other wonderful presenters and many of the sentiments that they've mentioned in regards of just kind of understanding that many issues, many justice issues exist, and that, you know, intersectional and marginalized community marginalized identities, you know, are really important to make sure that they do feel seen and heard and are part of this community. Just also in regards to, you know, what Miguel was mentioning a little bit earlier about some of those communities, we are heavily participated within our Long Beach Pride. We just had it last weekend for our parade. And so, you know, we try to be really thoughtful in how we really approach the community, Long Beach community as a whole, and really try to be a very supportive presence for all communities, and also being mindful of what communities are marginalized and how can we bring them in more. So some other examples of that would be our Festival of Human Abilities. So really kind of celebrating, you know, humans and everything that they are capable of is something that we do. And we have a variety of cultural festivals too, to be able to help, you know, other cultures that may not normally feel comfortable coming into the aquarium, feeling more comfortable, and really kind of hopefully diversifying the different types of guests that we have that engage and are more part of our aquarium community. We also have family science nights too. So really kind of thinking about the different audiences, not only just in regards of, you know, race or gender or diversity, but also in regards of looking at socioeconomic status. These are free events, but also thinking about like different groups like families, for instance. So we have these evening events where the aquarium is just for them. And these are, you know, sometimes free events that we have that really kind of allow families to bond together and to hopefully feel that science is something that's accessible to them, that they can have as a conversation and not something that's scary, right? So our goal is to really make it a friendly environment, make it, you know, meet all of the guests where they're at, and have a variety of different activities that families can focus on together, have discussion points, get a chance to engage in a lot of different ways that maybe they haven't, and also get a chance to really focus on, you know, their bonding experience, their feelings about science and the ocean world, and really kind of focusing these few hours and moments just on them.
One thing I just wanted to quickly add, like I think a good first step for any organization to build new partnerships is listening sessions. It's just really served us well. And again, though, like making sure that you're very transparent about what you can offer, what you can't, so that they don't feel like that vulnerability, that vulnerable moment they just shared was for nothing. And so I think, anyway, I think it's really a great way to start things off.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for answering that. Tina, do you have any questions for our panelists?
Yes, Miguel, I was curious, and thank you for sharing about all of the studies that you do outdoors with all these different animals. I'm curious what your day looks like. Do you spend more time outdoors, or is a lot of it indoors in the museum?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it is indoors. I had a computer. When I was younger, I was out more and wasn't as important, I guess. And so, but recent, it just depends what I'm doing. So, for instance, in the summer, I'm going to be out a lot scouting roost sites and also bringing community members out to bat roosts. And so that'll be a lot outdoors. But other parts of the year, I'll be inside. But right now, like, there's an exciting thing going on where another mountain lion is just spotted in Griffith Park. And so a little over a year after P22 passed away. So I'm out kind of monitoring a couple cameras out there to see kind of if the mountain lion's going to stay. So anyway, yeah, it just kind of depends what's going on, and the animals and their schedules kind of guide me as far as when I'm out and when I'm inside. But yeah, mostly inside, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. And then I had a question for Kate. Actually, maybe more of a statement, because you all have really been leaders in creating relationships with the local tribes and in an inclusive way, like all the tribal peoples of the area. And you've been able to expand a lot of scientific studies into BIPOC areas that are way outside of the territory through our agreement with SPI. And it's trickled down to Homeboy Industries and Sherman Indian High School. And so it's really been a great partnership. And I'm just curious, is there any opportunities to maybe expand on teaching these youth on scientific ways of, and especially around the MPAs?
Yeah, I mean, first, thank you. It feels like really important work. And I have to say, SPI, Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples, has been our partner in it. They have invested in us and our capacity to do the work. And we've made mistakes. You know, our organization has made mistakes there, and SPI has worked through them with us. And we've learned a lot. So yes, there's lots of opportunity. I think the only thing, you know, frankly, it's getting into schools, creating those relationships. We're there, we can resource it, and we would love to expand into additional schools and communities and find ways to do that. And the resources are there. We have an interesting a sort of an interesting setup at Crystal Cove, where we also have concession. So we have earned revenue that we can use to, you know, get buses and brings folks to the park to explore and to learn, and very often to teach us. So I don't know if I answered your question, because I was both thinking about the lion in Griffith Park and wanting to get there and be involved in that in some way, but also really just I'm so humbled by being on this panel and the work that SPI and other Indigenous folks have done with us and other communities as well. It just really feels like the most important work we can do. And I think we can't do conservation without doing equity advancement. It's absolutely critical. It has to be centered, or we're not going to be successful.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate you. And Jen, I can't leave you out. So the one thing that I do know that we do work with the Aquarium of the Pacific is our annual Mompatam gathering, which is the gathering of the saltwater peoples. And so I'm just curious, are you play any part of that as far as the programming and being on site?
I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately, I do not play a part in that. Our aquarium is so large that there's so many of us that are working towards a very common goal, but also that play different parts. So, for instance, we actually have a staff member on site that whose main responsibility is actually like keeping these festivals going and kind of building some of those relationships there. And then, we have others that kind of focus in other directions. So, mine's really kind of focused on schools and then also kind of bringing some education to local communities. But during that festival time, we definitely support all of the educational practices that are going on out there. So engaging in all the guests. At many of the festivals, we do have our own little station, education station, that we have out to be able to engage with folks. So not specifically for Moonbaton, though that is a wonderful festival that we definitely enjoy.
Thank you all. And thank you, Grace, for giving me an opportunity.
Oh, yes, of course. So if there isn't any other questions, yes, I would thank all of our panelists for sharing their valuable insights and experiences today. Your contributions have provided us with a deeper understanding of critical work being done in the environmental conservation and community engagement. And we look forward to continuing these important conservations and taking action to support and protect our natural worlds. So thank you to all of our listeners and participating in the Q&A, and then also for supporting the event. And then just to note, the RISJ speaker series 1 to 2 is up and uploaded and available on the Orange County Marine Protected Areas Council webpage, and available to view on the link. Number 3 is going to be uploaded within the week. So please share this information if you can. And thank you, everyone, and take care.
Bye. That was fun. I learned from everyone.
Yeah,
Bye,
same
everyone.
here. Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you. It was an absolute honor. Really appreciated it.
Really fun.
Bye, everybody.